All right. Welcome, everybody, to this week's community call. We hold these calls every other Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. UTC. Today, we have a packed agenda like many other days. This week's especially interesting because we experienced a loss event with Curve Finance, which proved to be quite interesting, packed with interesting developments, where the hacker paid part of the exploit back, and Brave will walk us through the guide for members planning to submit claims and also point us to the resources for members planning to act as claim assessors. Then we'll have Brave again, and he will review the tokenomics pre-discussion phases first 2 weeks. We had office hours with Ray and Brave held twice per week the last 2 weeks, and this is the last week we'll have one of those. So if you have any questions about how the new tokenomics project works, have any feedback, don't forget to jump in today or Thursday. We'll have more info. And Brave will also give us some ecosystem updates. These ones are quite interesting as the mutual expands its business and covers more risk. The updates here are prone to get even more interesting in time. We will have the weekly update from the foundation and then look at the numbers from the last week, and we'll have the chance to answer any open questions. Brave, would you like to kick things off?
Sure. Thanks, Sam. I will get things started, and I'll talk a little bit about the Curve Finance exploits, the claims process, and a little bit about claims assessment. So we can start on the next slide. So as everybody knows, there were 4 Curve pools that were exploited on July 30th due to an underlying vulnerability within the Viper compiler. Viper, for those of you who aren't aware, is the software language used by certain DeFi teams such as Curve and UnoRe. This is something that is competing with Solidity, and Solidity is the most common language used within DeFi protocols. So this exploit was able to drain 70 million, and the attack looks like it was conducted from a few different people, or at least that's the way it looks so far. But that exploit took place across those 4 pools, and the majority of exploited funds have actually been returned within the last week. So because there were several actors who participated in this exploit, different ones have returned funds to different teams that were affected. And I shared an update on the forum regarding the recovery so far, and I'll touch on that here before I talk about any potential claim submissions. The Alchemix team, which suffered a loss in the AL ETH pool, announced a recovery of the remaining stolen funds. They initially were able to rescue some funds in a white hat operation, but the remaining stolen funds were returned by the attacker just here in the last week. The JPEG team also announced that they recovered 5,495 WETH from the attacker, and they awarded the attacker a 10% white hat bounty for returning the funds. The Metronome team announced that they recovered a significant portion of the exploited funds, and the Curve Finance team was able to recover 2,879 ETH from CoffeeBabe.eth, which is somebody who runs a MEVBot operator. It's a MEVBot operator who was able to front run the attacker on a couple occasions. So this attacker was still able to steal about 7.2 million CRV and 7,680 from the Curve ETH within Curve. They have communicated with the attacker that exploited the CRV pool. They have now issued a $1.85 million bounty for information leading to the recovery of the stolen funds and information about the attacker. And somebody so far has come forward claiming to have the attacker's IP address, and they're demanding that funds be returned by 8 a.m. UTC tomorrow. So if you look, I've got the agenda in the community calls chat here. I'll also drop in that transaction where that message was sent by somebody who said they would release that information, which would effectively dox the attacker's IP address. So reimbursement is pretty much universally across all pools coming in some form. We'll see if more funds are returned to the CRV ETH pool. But all of these teams have shared they will share post-mortem reports, and all of them have indicated that some reimbursement plans will be discussed and outlined in those post-mortem reports. So there were the 4 Curve finance protocol covers that were active at the time of the exploit, and claims filing did open on Wednesday of last week. However, I did share advice to hold off on filing a claim, as it's clear that reimbursement plans are forthcoming. Even last week, reimbursement was made to some of the pools, and that reimbursement has only grown from initially, I think it was 20% of the funds last week, to now it's over 75% of the funds have been returned. So if you're planning to file a claim and your loss was in a pool where reimbursement plans will be shared, I would still advise holding off on filing until those plans have been shared. A lot of claim assessors have shared this in the past, but it's my personal opinion that when a loss occurs and reimbursement is made, there's been no material loss for the user since those funds were returned in the end. But with that said, anybody is able to file a claim, and members will review the validity of the claim and discuss that on the forum per the standard process. So we'll keep an eye out and see if any claims are filed. Of course, if those are filed, people will review those and discuss. We'll have to see what the timeline is on reimbursement. Talking a little bit about claims assessments. Claims assessors, there's also a guide for them on the forum, as well as anybody who's planning to file a claim. Plenty of resources. I've shared quite a bit of analysis that was shared across Twitter, posted on Substack or HackMD. There's been quite a few security experts who have shared pretty in-depth analysis, and the Viper postmortem is now available too. And all of the updates about reimbursement are also in the update that I shared on those forum posts. So if claims are filed, I'll make an announcement across the mutual social channels, and I'll update the Curve covers and claims tracker as well. But yeah, I mean, claims assessment, you can look in the docs on how to review and participate. It breaks down the process. Same within the claims guide that I shared. The entire process for filing a claim is outlined, the documentation as well as on the forum. So if anybody has any questions about the Curve Finance exploit or any potential claims or the reimbursement plans that are forthcoming, feel free to ask those now before I move on. Okay, if not, then I will move on and talk a little bit about the tokenomics pre-discussion phase. So Ray and I have been holding office hours for the last 2 weeks. This week will be the last week where we're holding office hours to talk about the RAM education guide. Given that we're in week 3, we have seen some engagement on the forum after the RAM education post was live, but we're still looking for comments and questions from members who plan to participate in the wider parameter discussions. Our goal is to just further simplify the explanations that you can find in the draft white paper, the draft technical specs, and the regular tokenomics updates that Ray has shared ahead of these parameter discussions. We want to make sure that all members who want to participate understand how the system works before these parameter discussions start, so everybody can engage in productive discussions and understand the impact and importance of each of these parameters and how they fit within the ratcheting AMM system. So if you haven't reviewed what's on the forum, I would really recommend that you check that out. And if you do have questions, Ray and I, like I said, are holding our last office hours this week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. UTC. So a little bit later today, we'll be hosting our office hours, and then again on Thursday. So if you've reviewed the RAM education guide and have questions, please attend one of our office hours. Last week, we saw some engagement. The first week, we didn't really have anybody that showed up, but last week we had people show up and ask about some of the parameters, how certain things are calculated within the RAM system when it is actually implemented and goes live. People talked about a couple edge cases and asked about those, which the team has already talked through. Talked a little bit about how the initial price works, how book value is calculated within the RAM, and a little bit about how the above and below pools work based on some questions. So we have seen engagement. People have come and asked questions, but we're always welcome to have more people join us and more people ask questions and get ready ahead of the first parameter discussion, which is going to start next week. So next week, Ray and I are going to kick off the liquidity parameters discussion, which is essentially asking how much ETH should go in the pool and how quickly. During that discussion, we'll talk about the opening parameters for liquidity, the liquidity injection speed, and the ratchet speed. We'll talk a little bit about the long-term parameters for target liquidity and the injection speed and ratchet speed, and then how we transition from the opening to long-term state. Since there's quite a bit to cover in that opening discussion, and you can see those specific parameters that will be discussed in the RAM education guide on the forum. The time frame is going to be scheduled from the 14th of August until the 12th of September, or a 4-week period. There are basically 3 main chunks that we're going to be going over and discussing, and each one kind of informs the next. So I think that 4 weeks is the minimum amount of time it's probably going to take to go through and discuss those, talk about the impact, and then move on throughout those discussions. So I hope everybody has a chance to review that, participate in these upcoming discussions, because they're very important. And I'm looking forward to talking about those with the community, and I know Ray is too. And the engineering team and the R&D team are putting a significant amount of work into this. And when we get to the foundation updates, I'll talk a little bit more about that, since Hugh isn't able to join us today. But I'll move on to the ecosystem updates. I have a couple pretty exciting announcements to make today. So I think people have known that we've talked about on previous calls before about the ability to build on top and to cover new types of risk now that Nexus Mutual V2 is live. And today we'll be officially announcing our partnership with InShare, which is the specialist in alternative risk transfer and mutuals, who is working with the retail mutual. We did talk about the retail mutual on our last call, but we'll be posting an official announcement today at 10 a.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. UTC. So with this partnership, Nexus Mutual is going to become the first to use on-chain capital to cover excess losses for a traditional discretionary mutual. By working with the mutual, InShare can support the retail mutual and protect more retail businesses across the UK against small business risk, such as fire, theft, and accidental damage. InShare purchased excess of loss and aggregate stop loss cover. You can see that on the Covers Dune dashboard, and that allows their client to pass risk on to Nexus Mutual's $270 million capital pool. And with this, Nexus can now further expand into real-world risk and underwrite new lines of business that aren't correlated to crypto markets, which is a massive, massive development. I imagine, much like some of the other deals that we've closed that have broken into a new market sector and a new product type, that once this announcement goes out, we'll see more interest, which will likely lead to more discussions about deals of this nature that talk about more real-world risk. And of course, he was shared before that foundation teams have been looking at other types of real-world risk and products that should be developed and introduced over time as well. So when I have updates about any future deals, I will let you know. But for today, you can look for those announcements across our socials, and there will be a forthcoming article published by CoinDesk sometime today as well. So really exciting. I'll stop here for a moment and ask if anybody has any questions about this announcement.
Yeah, I'd have one.
Sure.
So what are the limitations? So it must be under the framework of the discretionary mutual claims decision mechanism on the one hand, and or what are the limits for thinking of certain things? So can parametric insurance like earthquake cover be covered in this business?
So for this specific product type, for like excess cover loss, this is really allowing somebody to use the mutual for a discretionary version of reinsurance. So it's not quite the same. Could the mutual underwrite real world risks such as like real world catastrophic risks such as fire, earthquake, things like that? Yes. I mean, the way the Nexus Mutual V2 protocol is built, there is optionality for adding parametric triggers. So that is definitely a real world case. However, I think it depends on how the cover wording is put together and how things are structured. The trigger for this one specifically for the retail mutual cover is the excess loss. So that excess loss and the aggregate stop loss is defined within the cover wording for this product. So if losses by the retail mutual exceed a certain number or a certain percentage, then they're able to file a claim and that risk is passed off onto the mutual. So that is all defined in the retail mutuals cover wording. But as for other product types that could be developed, yes, there definitely is the potential to underwrite different kinds of real world catastrophic risk. It really, I imagine, would depend on how you do that and where you're offering it, since insurance is pretty heavily regulated around the world in many different places. So it's really how you set that up, offer that, and structure that.
I think there will be limitations, and the question is if this legal construct that you have, which works in the UK, if you can go abroad to cover real insurance risks. Yeah, you can of course then say no, it's not insurance. We are kind of betting, or yeah, we're not. But I guess there will be limitations, and of course it would be interesting to hear what businesses, what lines of business you are looking at, and also the markets that you're looking at.
Yeah. Well, I know in the past that Hugh has talked about directors and officers coverage, and I'm trying to think if there's any others that he's mentioned, but I think that's the only one I can think of for now, other than excess loss cover.
I have a question. Does this product, is it filed with regulators, or are there any policy forms that we need to, because I guess most of what we're doing has been non-discretionary coverage, so we haven't had to file it. So products like these, how's the filing process work?
Yeah, this is still discretionary cover, and this is an agreement between two discretionary mutuals, Nexus Mutual and then the Retail Mutual, which is another discretionary mutual in the UK. Yeah, so the other big one is that UnoRe protocol has decided to build on top of Nexus Mutual. If you look in the staking pool, UnoRe Watchdog launched this week. So staking pool 18 is now live. They've launched their pool 18, and this is another quota share cover setup, very similar to how Sherlock is structured. UnoRe is providing auditing and coverage services to various projects, and as they sell cover and expand their product offering for different projects that are launching that want audits and then coverage afterwards, then as they sell cover, they buy quota share cover from the mutual, and members benefit from UnoRe's growth. So now we have Sherlock and UnoRe building within the Nexus Mutual ecosystem, offsetting some of their risks, expanding capital, and adding new revenue streams to the capital pool. Over time, as their products grow, I expect more revenue to come in, but they've bought their first initial covers here in the last week, and they will be purchasing more in the coming weeks as well. So this is another exciting one. More people building pools on top, expanding coverage within their current distribution model, and then driving revenue back to the mutual. So between covering excess loss in the real world and covering it on chain, there's a lot of potential for growth, both within DeFi and within traditional markets as well. So yeah, we'll have more further announcement about that coming out here in the next coming week or so. And when that's live, we'll announce that across our social channels as well. But I will move on to the foundation updates. Hugh is unable to join us this week, so on his behalf, I'll be sharing some of the updates from the foundation. As far as the tokenomics projects, tokenomics implementation is progressing very well. The engineers are working through the last stages of the TWAP implementation, and they're moving on to optimization and extensive testing for the ratcheting AMM aspects and the system design. I know that the foundation has also fielded different RFPs for economic audits of the RAM, and they're nearing the end of the RFP process for the economic audit, and they've lined up solidity audit resources as well. So security is a very important part of the process. The engineering team is doing a lot of testing on the solidity contracts that they're developing in the implementation phase and lining up some of those audits so we can progress through this in a timely fashion while making sure we adhere to the best security practices we can. So having an economic audit and then a solidity audit is going to be a big boost, and then point out any potential flaws within the system before it ever goes live. And talking about the InShare partnership, hopefully you'll be seeing an article in CoinDesk regarding the retail mutual cover. I'll take a look and see if that's live right now, but I know that's something that the foundation team, especially the business development team, has been working on for quite a while. So seeing that go live is definitely very exciting. And I know that, yeah, looking right now and seeing if CoinDesk has picked it up yet. And they have. So I'll share that in the chat as well. So yeah, that article is live. And then, like I said, we'll have that announcement go live here in a little bit. On the sales slide, the slashing deal pipeline is looking pretty solid. They're exploring a few more real world opportunities, and the foundation is also developing some other crypto native products. There's a lot of items going on with the goal of discovering what works well and then expanding sales within those categories. So, but yeah, there's been quite a few slashing deals in discussion, and when I have more information I can share about some of the real world risk developments, I'll definitely share that with the community, but I'll probably wait for Hugh to share that on our next community call. But yeah, so those are the foundation updates. Are there any questions before I hand things over to Sem? Okay. If not, I'll hand things over to Sem to share some community updates and the weekly analysis. Sem?
Thanks, Brave, for the very useful updates. I'm really looking forward to the mutual covering more real-world risk. So we have some updates on the forum that we want to share with you. It's also about our communications on a regular basis. We have been publishing the hedge weekly, and we had a lot of weekly analysis in there, touching upon the latest cover sales and also the latest action items for the mutual members and governance. Moving forward, we will be publishing the hedge monthly instead of weekly, and we will be experimenting with different types of content that touch upon future of risk sharing. And we will be publishing our weekly updates on the Nexus Mutual forum, and you will be able to reach them under the Nexus Mutual updates category. You can already see some of the last week in review posts for within the weekly analysis subcategory, and the DAO updates with the recent governance action items will be published starting next week. And also make sure to follow Nexus Mutual DAO on Twitter, as we will be retweeting and resharing some of the recent happenings on there as well. And if you have any further ideas or any other communications regimen that you like from other projects, let us know. We are both available on the Nexus Mutual Discord. Moving on to the weekly analysis. Over the last week, between 31st of July and 6th of August, so some of the recent news are not reflected here, the mutual has sold about $9,030 of cover and earned about $2,000 in fees. This is a decrease from the previous week, but there are big news coming in, and we do see some less activity as it's summer and it's the season. Looking at active coverage by cover type, we have about $53.4 million of active cover, with protocol cover leading our list of most purchased cover product offered by the mutual. And like I said, we will be reporting the different types of cover products recently purchased by UnoRe soon. Now it's time for open forum. If you have any questions or any feedback that we haven't covered already, please feel free to share them now.
Yeah, I have a question. So you said to hold back on the curve claims because some of the funds were being recovered. I remember when Euler was paid out, we ended up paying claims and then Euler recovered the funds. Were we able to recover all the funds that we had paid out as claims that then they would have got the money back from Euler? And if not, what are we actively doing to do that and to prevent that in the future?
Yeah, two things here. One, timeline between curve reimbursement and Euler was a bit different. There was about a month that it took to recover those funds. On the Euler side, not a lot of updates. On the curve side, reimbursement pretty much happened inside of a week. It was just a matter of basically 1 day for some of the first reimbursement to be made, and then it happened over about 5 days. So a little bit of a shorter time frame. On Euler, we recovered about 2 million, the claims that were paid. So 2 million was sent back and then sent to the capital pool. And there are a couple outstanding claims that have not yet been paid back, but per one of the recent governance votes, members did authorize the advisory board to pursue reimbursement, and that is actively being pursued by the Foundation Legal Counsel at this time for Euler specifically. For Curve, and this kind of applies to, some of these claims that come up in the interim while Protocol V1.0 covers are expiring. For Curve specifically, we know that reimbursement is coming, and they just have to share a plan on what that reimbursement is. So, in my opinion, I don't think I would vote on a claim that was filed before any reimbursement plans were shared, since it's clear that vast majority of the funds are going to be returned. So we really need to know what the actual impact of the loss is once recovery is made. What we're doing about it in the future, that's kind of the way that we designed protocol cover wording, the V2 that members approved. So if you look at that, and I will find that right now, you can find it in the UI for any of the protocol cover products that are listed. You can see it specifically. I put that in the chat. You can see specifically there is a section that talks about reimbursements, how those are treated. And for V2.0 covers, there's a provision under Clause 9, wherever possible, the covered member shall send any tokens that are likely to be used by the designated protocol for future reimbursements to Nexus Mutual DAO or the Foundation in advance of submitting a claim. So there are provisions in the new wording to protect against this. But going back to Euler, that one's a little bit different because none of those tokens were transferable. The D tokens or the E tokens were not transferable because the whole protocol was upgraded after the exploit happened to mitigate any further losses. So when tokens aren't transferable, then basically we follow the process that's outlined in cover wording. There are means to pursue reimbursement based on the way the cover wording is written. It's outlined there. It's all defined. This was previously understood before, but not in the cover wording. Now it is. So ultimately, it's up to members, though. If there's reimbursement in the case like Curve, I think it's pretty cut and dried, in my personal opinion. We don't pay claims where there's reimbursement because that means no material loss has occurred and the person is still getting their funds back. If, however, reimbursement is made months down the line, and that's not something that is understood previously that there was going to be any way to recover those funds, then that's something that applies to some of those edge cases where tokens can't be sent to the DAO treasury or to the foundation directly, which then can use that to claim any future reimbursement. As for things like FTX, claim payouts, and BlockFi, that is also being handled by the Foundation Legal Counsel, and they're going through the process of handling the handover of those bankruptcy claims, if the mutual can claim those as well. So that process is definitely underway. But as for Curve, we'll have to see if anybody files claims. Based on what I looked at on Chain, I don't believe any of the cover holders were affected, but they may have another address that they didn't use to buy cover with that was. So we'll have to see how things shake out. So, but yeah, anything else before we wrap up today's call? Okay. If not, I will hand things back over to Sem to wrap things up.
Thanks, Brave, and thanks, guys, for the questions. And also, thanks for joining us. We hold these calls every other Tuesday, with our next call happening on the August 22nd. Hope to see you all there. Have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, everybody. See you on the next call, and see you in office hours later today if you're going to join us. I hope that you do.